Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. I hope you had a really good Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, or whatever you celebrate. I hope you had a really good holidays. So today's video is about an article which was brought to my attention from Politico magazine. It's like an online article. It is called Opinion 2022 is the year we all finally got tired of narcissists. And its subheading is Narcissists had their moment in the sun, but in 2022, some of them got their comeuppance and some of them got worse, our disinterest. So this was posted about 2 days ago, I believe, so what a nice Christmas present that was. I just wanted to go through it very briefly. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but as you know, I'm trying to keep track of the sort of campaign of abuse that's being aimed at Meghan Markle at the moment and has been for a while. So strap in, and I'm going to try and pull some of the argument apart, specific parts of this that I thought would be valuable to look at. So I just want to say, first of all, we've got Meghan right in the centre of the image here. I'm going to put the link to this in the description box so you can see it for yourself. I'm not going to put it on my screen because I don't want to get copyright strikes. But she's there with Donald Trump, with Elon Musk, and she's right slap bang in the middle. It gets them outrage clicks, it gets them, some pushbacks. So, I'm always thinking when I'm doing these, I'm thinking, should I do it? Should I give them the attention? But I think it's important because it's demonstrating how they abuse somebody via media, but you can also apply it to other systems of abuse and oppression, in our everyday lives. So it's worth, I kind of weighed that up in my mind and thought it's worth drawing attention to it. In that very first sentence, that narcissists had their moment in the sun, but in 2022, some of them got their comeuppance and some of them got worse, our disinterest. Like, we've already got gaslighting going on here. Because Meghan being dragged into this, they're trying to make out that, oh, we're giving them our disinterest. They're trying to get our attention and we don't care. It's a blatant, like, the very picture underneath it is using Meghan in the middle of this sea of unpleasant people to get outrage clicks. Like, that's not your disinterest, is it? You've put her slap bang in the middle here for a reason and for a reaction. Like, that's gaslighting. It's not her that's put herself here, is it? Like, if you actually look at how much Meghan has spoken and what she's actually said, there isn't really that much there, honestly. But it's this obsession that the tabloids have and the papers have and the media have. They are doing this themselves. They are putting her on their front covers. They are making her into this villain. They are making her name become this, massive thing that people rally behind if they're against, like, woke culture. And then they blame the victim. They've made her a victim and then they've blamed her for it by saying, oh, look how arrogant she is. She's putting herself in the centre of everything. We're so tired of hearing her name. You're the ones putting her name out there. It's so sick and it's so obvious. It's so obvious to see. So the article is a bit iffy in itself because it's talking about the idea of narcissism and narcissists. And this is an interesting one because I feel like, although it's a really good thing to talk about narcissism and narcissistic traits, and it's kind of, it might be better to talk about abusers and abusive traits because NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is a personality disorder. I'm always hesitant of, using something like that to kind of brand a whole group of people as really bad. I understand that, the traits of it can lead to abuse, but that's something that's difficult in the mental health community and when you're talking about personality disorders, because you've got to be really careful with that. I have got a video coming actually about how, I don't know if you've noticed, you probably have if you follow what's going on, a lot of body language experts, a lot of people who are supposed to be brilliant at spotting abuse systems, supposedly spotting narcissistic abuse, all those kind of things, narcissistic abuse, they have somehow come out of this with the perspective that Meghan herself is the narcissist. And to me, as someone who, like, I get these systems, I've lived these systems, I kind of do understand them. What I'm actually seeing is Darvo. I've spoken about Darvo before, so it's a system of abuse which is deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. And we're at that stage where they're reversing victim and offender, right? So it's a way to re-victimize that victim by then positioning them as the initial aggressor in the first place, right? And no one wants to address reality. That's part of the gaslighting, that's part of the abuse. So a lot of these people are jumping on the bandwagon with, oh, Meghan's a narcissist. And it's really disappointed me a lot because I think what we're actually seeing is what happens to a victim in the later stages, where a victim who stands up for themselves is made into the aggressor, right? And it's meant to make them be afraid to speak out. But they also can't win because if they're silent, then the attacks don't stop either. As we've seen with Meghan Markle, they will continue to use her name. They will continue to abuse her whether she speaks or not. So whatever she does, she can't win in the system, and that's how we know it's an abusive system, right? There's no common sense. There's no actual way for the victims of this to defend themselves or to get any sort of fair hearing here. So I don't want to go through this whole article because it doesn't all pertain to Harry and Meghan, although it's very interesting how they've linked Meghan in with these people like Trump and Elon Musk. Like, it's like Jeremy Clarkson. Sorry if I keep closing my eye, by the way. Like, my mascara is in my eye. But we are once again seeing Meghan linked to really awful people. Like Jeremy Clarkson linked her to Rose West. So, you know, this is a pattern at this point. If you see this eye watering throughout the video, I'm not crying. It's the mascara. I could cry. It's a very sad situation. But a paragraph that I particularly did want to focus on here is this one. Again, I've just got my master's for creative writing, so I'm very interested in picking apart the particular word usage and the implications that come between the words. Like, what's the subtext here? Okay, so the paragraph is that somewhere between the 5th and 6th hour of Harry and Meghan, the new Netflix documentary series produced by the former Duke and Duchess of Sussex and filmed at their California mansion, which suggests that there is no one more in love, no one more socially conscious, no one more aggrieved, my natural sympathy for the couple started turning to irritation, and it occurred to me that the ego had its limits. And it struck me that the overreach that led to the Sussex's critically panned mega-series is the same impulse that turned Elon Musk into a terror on Twitter, that prompted Kanye to up the ante of outrageous behaviour until he crossed that line into blatant anti-Semitism, that sent Bankman-Fried from the top of the world to a Bahamian jail. Okay, so the things I picked up on just in this paragraph alone, you know, but somewhere between the 5th and 6th hour of Harry and Meghan, it's the gaslighting implication that, oh, they're really going on a bit, aren't they? Like, they're taking too long to tell their story. And there's also a real fakeness here, you know, because there's a pretense that this person, that this author, had originally had sympathy for the couple. And then it began turning to irritation because the series was too long. Now, do we actually believe that? Of course we don't. There's always an excuse. There's always an excuse not to empathise with them. There's something later on which also displays this, but it's a complete lie. There's always this lie with these people that, oh, we would have been sympathetic, but then you went and did this. So it's again, we can tie this to society and to abuse because it's someone who's not the perfect victim, right? And the trick to this is that there is no perfect victim. Because no matter what the victim does, they won't be believed. But the lie will be that if you'd just done this differently, if you'd just done that differently, if you'd acted a little bit differently, then of course we would have believed you. You know, it's really bad. I don't know how they have somehow linked the Sussexes to Elon Musk and Twitter. I'm not sure what the connection there is at all. Can anyone tell me what that connection is? We've also got the Sussexes critically panned mega series. Like, critically panned? I mean, this is a hit job, right? And I wouldn't mind if they were honest about it, right? But the writer is coming from a position where they're pretending, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but they're pretending I'm very reasonable and I was on their side until this. It's just such a lie. Like, I wish they'd just be honest, but obviously they can't be. But there's a particular part, right? And it's the there's actually italics used here for no one more in love, no one more socially conscious, and no one more aggrieved. And this is so interesting, right? And I thought we should look at this. So let's look at no one more in love first of all. In italics, no one more in love. So first of all, it's a projection from the author, because at no point have Harry and Meghan, to my knowledge, ever claimed that they are more in love than anybody else in the world. Ever. So straight away, you know, it's based on a lie. And it's gaslighting because it's taking away context, right? And abusers do this. They strip context from a situation. So a retaliation or a response is then twisted so that it becomes the inciting incident, okay? And you also see this in oppression, right? So you'll see an oppressed group that are mistreated, and then when they fight back or they speak out, they are then accused of being the aggressors, right? And the one who started the situation. So, you know, the idea is they're trying to present that Harry and Meghan are this privileged couple out of nowhere who wanted to inflict their love story on all of us, and they're just trying to show us how in love, and they're just trying to show us how in love and how privileged they are, and it's, you know, oh, how awful, you know, it's arrogant, it's this. That's not really fair, is it? Because, sure, if this came out of nowhere, right, if there wasn't any context, I would agree. But what is the actual context that we're looking at here? What we are looking at here is a couple's love story which has been told by others about them, right? So in our British media, I can only speak for the media in Britain, we've had Meghan portrayed as some sort of like evil seductress, you know, using vivid bedroom promises, thanks Jeremy Clarkson, to entice Harry and turn him into this woke person. And we've had accusations that she's abusing him and turning him against his own family, right? We've had Harry like emasculated and his agency taken away, as if this isn't a love story, as if their whole relationship is a PR move, some people have suggested, because they're an interracial couple. Okay, so we're not coming from a context of, you know, they're not coming out of nowhere with none of this nastiness and just saying, oh, look how in love we are and how privileged they are. This is them responding. Their relationship, true, it's none of our business. But if that's the case, then the tabloids shouldn't have made it. Like, they are commenting on it. This is a response. This is a response that I find quite normal, to be honest. If it was you and your partner, and you had the world's media, or the media where you were at, trying to imply that your relationship was abusive, or it was fake, or, you know, one of you was being made into a hate figure and the other one didn't have any agency, Is that not a normal human impulse? And wouldn't most of us literally just come out and say, actually, we are in love? This is a love story, no matter what you're trying to spin here. You know, they're stripping out the context. And I when they take the context out, sure, it sounds arrogant, but that's because they've taken the context out. They're doing it for a reason. You know, Meghan has been presented as manipulative and alienating, and that this isn't really a love story. And especially with Harry, it's Harry who says about the love story, okay? And in the documentary, he says, you know, I think our love story is just getting started. It's just beginning. And people have really mocked him for this. And they've been like, oh, he's delusional. He's arrogant. Is he, though? Remember, this is somebody whose their relationship was private. They wanted it to be private. And then it came out and they basically became the scapegoats in the media. Meghan was torn apart. She became suicidal. What should have been... what most couples should be entitled to and should have is that period of like real happiness when they're together, and have that lovely period at the start, and have their relationship grow naturally and happily. That's kind of, there's been attempts to stop that with them, and that's what they are fighting against. So when people accuse them of, oh, they're showcasing this epic love story, they need to get a grip, you know, they need to remember that, you know, they're not better than anyone else. They're not saying that. Think about the context. Think about the context of which they're saying this. To me, like, I think one of the big criticisms of the documentary is people who are taking away the context and not thinking about them as human beings with empathy. Because this is a story that shouldn't concern the public at all, but it has been put against their will and against their consent into the public domain, but also been told falsely. So them coming out and saying, actually, no, this is how we fell in love. You know, I've seen people saying, oh, you know, it's not very... we were expecting more information. I believe that part of what they were doing was to show, actually, no, this was us falling in love. It wasn't sinister. It was really, in fact, quite normal. We really did fall in love. And these were the obstacles that we faced. And this is the way they're portraying us. And of course, a victim speaking about that abuse and defending themselves will always be twisted. The victim will always be called selfish, self-interested, you know, making a big deal out of things, wanting attention. Like, this is why I want to talk on this topic, because it doesn't just apply to Harry and Meghan. It doesn't just apply to the rich and famous. We are seeing an abuse system in action, and we can all learn from it. I mean, I also think with this, we also see the bitterness and jealousy involved, you know, with this writer, and with a lot of the people who hate on them so much. I think there's a genuine anger and frustration at the fact that Harry stands by Meghan. And it seems to be an equal relationship. And I think to them, they think that must be fake because they don't perhaps have that themselves. So they think it must be a PR move. It can't be real, right? It can't be real. I genuinely think there's a bitterness in it, and there's a real jealousy. And I've thought for a while that, especially with Meghan and Harry, there's racism in the sense that some racist white women perceiving this, they almost feel slighted by Meghan because Prince Harry decided to marry a mixed race woman. And it's like they feel personally slighted even though they never met him. Right, and again, let's remember that this is an interracial couple that has been subjected to the most absurd and disgusting racism in our media and by the general public, right? Encouraged by the tabloids. So the very act of them putting their love story out there and focusing about, you know, the differences in their backgrounds. So Meghan's history, how she feels about her identity, how she feels being mixed, right? How she feels being black. You know, is she passing? Does she pass? Where does she fit? That's part of the story. So I think to undermine that in the context of the racism they faced is in itself quite racist, in my view. Okay, so then we've got no one is more socially conscious, and it's the implication that Harry and Meghan think that they are so much more socially conscious than everyone else in the world. And again, that's not what they've said. It's a misrepresentation. It's making them into villains. It's not, and I have no problem with people not liking them, right? Or being against them. But let that be for something they've actually said. Let that be for something they've actually done. Let that be reality, right? Rather than a smear campaign. People can't defend themselves when there's no reality in these claims and these accusations. So the reality is, you know, with this socially conscious thing, is that if you look at, for example, what Harry said, he's talking about unconscious bias, right, and learning about his own unconscious bias. He's talking about breaking generational curses and generational behaviours in families and trying to set boundaries. You know, he's talking about that kind of thing. I don't believe he's tried to, from my perspective, position himself as an expert. I think he is speaking as somebody who does have something of value to say because he came from a place which did not teach anti-racism, and through his life and the path he's on, he is now learning it. And I think he's being pretty open about the fact that he's learning all the time. I don't think he's trying to position himself as an expert on it. I think if he was trying to position himself as an expert, I would be against him myself. But that I don't believe that's what he's doing. I really don't. And let's look at Meghan. You know, she's been portrayed from the start as some holier than thou do-gooder, right? And again, this is what we see in Britain at least, and I'm sure it's the same in the US. People who care about social justice and want social change, and you know, Meghan isn't the most left-wing person. You know, she's I don't know her full politics, but I think that especially when she was part of the royal family, she was quite liberal but quite tame with it. She was very careful with what she said because she was going to get so much more backlash than anyone else, right? But even those things she did say, like small things like talking about mental health and talking about gender equality, you know, it got her presented as some sort of narcissist just for pointing that out, because that's what we do to whistleblowers. We do that to people who see that the system is wrong. The first thing we do to dismiss them is we make out that, oh, you've got a victim mentality and you want attention. That's really why you're talking about this stuff, right? People who don't want change or reflection or growth because they don't want to do that work and because they know that it will look badly, you know, they won't look great. People who won't do that work will completely tarnish and rubbish anyone who will. I mean, if you look at the disproportionate nature of these criticisms, based on the things that Meghan and Harry have said, which aren't really that extreme, you know, I'm pretty left-wing myself, and I can see them moving further left, but I don't think they've said anything like particularly super left yet, although I can see them going there. I love what they say about unconscious bias, etc. And I think it's, you know, I do really appreciate what they're doing, talking about the system and talking about what they've been through. I think it's really valuable to us. But they're not radicals, right? And sometimes I wish they would be more radical. They're not radicals, and yet they're already being smeared because this isn't about them, right? It's about people who do want change. And they were a high-profile target because it's a message to the rest of us here that they wanted to move slightly to the left. They wanted to point out inequality. Well, they've been completely destroyed, or that was the attempt. And also remember that it's ironic that they're talking about, you know, narcissism. Again, careful with that term, but, you know, that idea that people only do things that are altruistic because they want attention. But really that's a projection, and that shows so much about the person that thinks that. Because I don't know, I feel like for most of us, we do try and do good for people. We fall down sometimes, but we try and do good for people, and it's because we want to do good for people. But these people genuinely can't understand it, because in their minds, the only reason they'd do anything good is because it would look good. Therefore, whenever anyone does something good for people, they can only imagine they're doing it to look good. And again, it's Darvo, and we look at that in terms of oppression and people that speak out about injustice, because we've got that twisting where suddenly the person speaking out about injustice suddenly becomes the villain, or they have to be the villain, where actually they're making a big deal out of nothing and it's all about them and they're arrogant. You know, it's this horrible twisting. Okay, and lastly, I want to go for no one more aggrieved, because, you know, she used the rule of threes there. You know, she went for 3 statements. So no one more aggrieved. And this is a real killer, and this ties to social justice a lot, because it's basically what happens when you call out an injustice. You speak about perhaps injustice you faced, or that other people have faced, or that you see, and usually the people that don't want you to speak about injustice will respond by saying, well, other people have it worse. What, you think you have it worse? Maybe you should shut up. But remember that every single movement in history has had that said to them. I mean, like in this country, for example, when we were having the gay marriage debate, you would genuinely have people saying, I don't know why you're complaining. You know, it's fine here. At least you're not being killed. At least you're not being killed for being gay. So I don't know why you feel so aggrieved. You know, you've got it good. You know, nothing would ever change if we told people that they had to be the most worse off in the whole world, because there's always going to be someone worse off. It doesn't mean we don't challenge systems that are unequal around us, right? The small changes we make, it all ties up. It all adds up to more justice overall. And again, Harry and Meghan have not claimed to be the most aggrieved. They are talking about their own treatment, the experience they've had as victims of this system. And we have, in the UK at least, in Britain, we have this mentality against being a victim, right? And it's almost like it's a dirty word. And it's this idea that to admit that you've been a victim of someone, or that you have been abused, or that you have suffered in some way, is, I think for men it's considered to be emasculating in some way, but it's meant to show that you're weak, right? That you're a snowflake, and it all works so that whistleblowers don't speak and that people don't talk about what they've been through, and it protects abusers. That's all it is. I think that what we've seen from Harry and Meghan, like we've all seen with our own eyes, they have been through enough that they have a right to be angry about it, and that they have suffered injustice. And that's fine. I'm not saying their injustice is, you know, they've suffered the worst injustice in the world. I don't think they're saying that. But does that dismiss the actual injustice they are facing and have faced? Because we can't run a society like that. And the reason they say these things is because they don't want anything to change. That shuts down so much, doesn't it? And that is, again, why I talk about this kind of thing and why I think it's so important, because it's not... Meghan and Harry have become sort of symbols for this. The media have made them that. And I think they're trying to make the best of it. I think, you know, this is a couple who have been completely monstered by the media, and thank goodness they have decided they're going to fight back, right? They're going to have their own voice and they're going to try and speak out about this. And it's, you know, there's some people who will always believe the tabloids no matter what. But I think those of us that actually care to look at what's going on can see the truth, and I'm glad that's out there. But it's a threat to all of us, right? It's a threat to anyone who wants to challenge the status quo, because what we are watching with real life people who suffer injustice, right, or abuse victims, are seeing how the system is turning on these people, right? They are seeing all those familiar tropes used against abuse victims used on a massive, massive scale. It's a huge threat, because what we're seeing the abused made into the abusers. We're seeing them ridiculed. We're seeing them asked for proof, and then when they give proof, the proof is discarded, right? We are seeing the people who abuse them being excused. We are seeing them accused of, when they speak about the injustice, they're being accused of being attention seekers and after fame. And they're being accused of not being tough enough and being too woke and being snowflakes and playing victim. And this is relevant to all of us, right? This is relevant to anyone in an abuse situation. Anyone who's been mistreated. This is relevant to anyone who understands oppression. It's very much like what happened to Jeremy Corbyn in this country, in Britain, right? He stood up against injustice. He had principles, and so the media had to destroy him, right? He had to be destroyed, and it was a message to other people. That's what it is. Okay, and I have a few extra notes here, just a couple of extra things. So the article actually uses one of Meghan and Harry's photographs, and it's the one of them in the kitchen, the one that some people thought was like explicit. It's not explicit. It's literally just them kissing in the kitchen. It's just like a peck on the lips. I think there's a bit of a cheat to use that, basically, anyway, like to use their photograph in this article. The caption is, "The Guardian compared Meghan and Harry to a pair of ancient mariners with a TV contract, condemned to tell their tale to everyone they meet." There's no word here about how the media is actually technically filling that role, right? They are condemned to always talk about Meghan and Harry. The right-wing papers, you know, in Britain, on all the magazines, they sell because they say nasty things about Meghan and Harry. They're the ones condemned to keep bringing them up. Meghan and Harry have gone somewhere else. Nobody has to watch their documentary. There's the comments in this about, oh, the 5-6 hour documentary. Don't watch it. Don't watch it then. There's this paragraph. Their current Netflix series premiered to high ratings and an explosion of media think pieces. Part of it is chilling, an up-close look at the British tabloid press, complete with heart-wrenching footage of Harry's mother Diana hounded by paparazzi. But the legitimate complaints are wedged between glamour shots, from footage of Meghan getting fitted for ball gowns to a vast collection of flattering photos and videos they took during their royal exit, apparently preparing for a photogenic tell-all. Even sympathetic critics have groused that there's little new here beyond the vanity. And again, this is the fake part here. Listen to this, right? The legitimate complaints are wedged between glamour shots, but the legitimate complaints are wedged between glamour shots. So the implication here is that, oh, you know, there were some legitimate complaints, but then I saw some nice shots of Meghan and I decided to completely discard them. And again, it's a lie, because you know that whether those shots were in it or not, they would find a way to discard it, like they always do with people who speak out against injustice, who speak against power. They always find some reason why the victim isn't worthy of being listened to. And in this, they've decided it's because there's too many nice pictures. There's too many nice pictures of Meghan. And, you know, the bit that says there's little new here except the vanity. And again, I would ask people to challenge the way they think about this situation, okay? I don't know these people. Maybe they are vain people. I don't know. But what we do know is, think about, for example, Harry's life and his relationship to photographs, for example. He has a fear of photographers. They trigger him. So he lived a life where he was born as a mascot. Everything he did was sort of in the public domain. You know, it was on all the magazines. It was in the papers. He was also a spare and a scapegoat to protect his big brother, and I can't even imagine what that did to their relationship. It must have been horrific. He has been a victim of the tabloid press his whole life. Basically, photographs have never really been in his control. His image has never been in his control. You know, he doesn't get to consent. He has pictures of himself everywhere since he was a child, and he has spoken about how it felt to be chased by paparazzi, like on family holidays, just going to school. So I'm sorry if people think it's a bit vain, but this is somebody whose relationship with photography and photographs of himself and his loved ones is going to be really complex. good for him, right? If he's reclaiming that and he's someone who likes to take photographs on his own terms. It's about consent. This is him taking photographs of his family on his own terms. And I think, again, people are coming at this as if Harry's just some random person off the street who's like, oh, look through all my family photos, you know. This is somebody who's become a mascot for us, right? He's been our entertainment. But so what if he takes photographs and he likes to take the photographs and he's taken them, Meghan's taken them. It's about consent. It's about what they want to share. Like, I feel like people can forgive him if they think it's so bad that there's so many photographs that he's taken which are so photogenic and staged. Probably because he's lived his life with photographers like coming out of the bushes and chasing his girlfriends and trying to catch him coming out of bars and being in cars. Like, so what if he takes some shots of himself and his family and they're flattering? Like, is that the end of the world? Does that invalidate the comments that they're making and the points they're making about the racism they faced? No, it doesn't. I don't even know why that's coming into this, if these people are legitimate. And last of all, the article goes on to say that such narcissism may be benign for now, but it will become dangerous. They don't explain how. How will it become dangerous? I guarantee you, if the tabloid press just left them alone and stopped making them hate figures, because they make money out of it, they would fade. Right? Most of the reason why they are so famous right now is because you guys wouldn't leave them alone. Just leave them alone. If you want a media blackout on them, stop doing this. It's all so fake. It's such a lie. And of course, they also put down Harry's book, which is coming out, which is called Spare. It's basically saying people shouldn't read the next book. How about people buy what they want? How about people read what they want? You know? And again, it's the preemptive silencing of an abuse victim. That's what we can look at here, right? But we don't know what's in the book, and they don't know what's in the book. Clearly, they are frightened that something's going to come out in that book which isn't great, right? And it's going to make the royal family maybe not look good, or it's going to make the media not look good. Or, you know, most dangerously, it's going to make Harry look like a human being. It's going to make Meghan look like a human being. And then they're all going to have to face the shame of realising they've made hate figures out of just two random people and their family and put them through terror and horror. So they have to in advance trash it. You know, they can't wait and see. If they were legitimate, you know, genuine people, they'd be thinking, oh, I wonder what's going to be in that. You know, maybe I'll change my mind. They're not open to that. Like, it's literally just a way to silence whistleblowers, to silence people who've been abused. It's a message to every single person reading it. That's all it is. Anyway, hope you had a good Christmas, or and that you're going to have a really good New Year. This should come out before New Year, hopefully. Love you loads, and I'll see you really soon, and tell me what you think. All right, love you. Bye.